So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 6th Annual Education and Scientific Symposium. It's the second year that we have hosted this at Rush. I mean, how about this room? The Greater Chicago chapter would like to give a personal shout out to Billy, the gentleman who is responsible for catering and putting this all together. He's an amazing individual, has no connection to ALS, ran the marathon for us this year, got red tablecloths for us because he knows our colors are red and white, ordered the red roses for us in honor of all of you that come here. He was so moved by seeing everyone here. So I'm just going to start out by saying that this event is our marquee event, and it was created specifically and solely for your needs and what you need. And in order for us to give you all the most comprehensive information about the whole current landscape of ALS, which is very complex, as those of you all know, because our mission pillars are care, advocacy, research, and awareness. So for many of you here, quite frankly, you're not too interested in research. We've heard that. Some of you aren't too interested in research or advocacy. You're interested in awareness. So what we tried to do today with our vendors and service providers in this day is to meet the needs of what you want. So to that end, I wanted to let you all know that throughout the presentations of our expert panel, you guys have note cards. And those note cards is because we want this day to be kind of talk show style, and so that you guys can interact more than just us talking to you. At this time, we would also like to thank our vendors and service sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, this year we have 19 sponsors. So can we please give them... that's an unprecedented support for any ALS organization, and it's an opportunity for us to showcase them and for them to showcase what they do kind of in a non-clinical setting. Many of our sponsors that are on your program have been with us for 6 years, pre-Ice Bucket Challenge, when it was very difficult to find partners and people to journey alongside of us. So we are very genuine in our thanks to the vendors that are here, and also offering you an opportunity to see them outside of the clinic setting. So while you were enjoying the vendor expo, there was a great meeting going on in the hallway, down the hallway, of some of the greatest scientists and researchers in the state of Illinois and beyond. This is a threefold event. It's a scientific symposium that's taking place. It's the vendor expo, and it's the luncheon. Just so that you all know, we have unbelievable researchers in almost every medical institution here in the city, and the Greater Chicago chapter partners with all of them. I would like to take this opportunity for the scientists that are here today. Before they stand, I'd like to point out 3 that came in from a distance and who are very, very well known in the field of ALS, doing cutting-edge research, the first of which is Dr. Timothy Miller from Washington University in St. Louis. Yes, there's a lot of them. So, but Dr. Miller is doing a great study. He is here. He's here to speak with you and to learn about what he's doing. The second doctor that is here, who's also a panelist, is Dr. Paul Cox, who came all the way from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to talk about his work. We have representatives, Northwestern scientists and researchers, if you could stand and identify yourselves. Anybody from Northwestern here? Dr. Hande Osdenler has been a great champion of the cause. Javier from Northwestern, and I don't have my glasses on. Max. So thank you, Max. We also have UIC researchers, many of them here. We have Dr. Loeb, who's the chairman of neurology. We have Dr. Brady, Dr. Morfini. We have Fei Song. And we have Sanjitha and Angelica. They're doing great work. They have posters in the hallway. That's UIC, our next door neighbor. University of Chicago. The great and fabulous and wonderful Dr. Roos. So Dr. Roos is the pioneer of this educational symposium. For those of you who don't know, we have hosted the symposium at University of Chicago for the first couple of years. Dr. Roos is also a clinician scientist. He's one of the last of the dying breeds of people who are clinicians and scientists and do research as well. We have a North Shore Clinic represented here. If they could please stand. The members of North Shore, Dr. Octavia Kincaid and her staff. And then we have Dr. Sean Wallery from Mercy Health, former Rockford Memorial. Drove all the way down from Rockford this morning, so thank you, Dr. Wallery. And of course, we have Dr. Kvarnberg from the VA and his team. And Dr. Kvarnberg will be speaking. So we have, as you can tell, relationships with 6 hospitals. We fund 6 clinics. Many of you who are here today are responsible for helping us fund these clinics, of which Rush is one. We are hosting our clinic with the Rush Multidisciplinary Clinic team here, led by Dr. Margioli and Dr. Soni in the back, and Rabia, is she? Yeah. So these doctors are here for you. They are the clinic directors in the hospitals that we collaborate with. So I just want to point out that there's a lot going on in the field of ALS, and it's almost impossible for us to keep up with it in regard to all the, on this slide, all the research that's happening, all the advocacy work. But I just want to take a moment to go over a little slide about, for us, about where we are and what happened. You can take a look at the slide, but I wanted to say a couple things to all of the people that are living with ALS and their caregivers. ALS was discovered. I mean, Jean-Martin Charcot discovered ALS in 1869, which was 147 years ago. That's when ALS was discovered. The Cubs won the first World Series in 1907, which was 109 years ago. Lou Gehrig gave his Luckiest Man Alive speech 77 years ago, and our chapter was founded 13 years ago. So imagine a disease being discovered in 147 years, and it's only really been within the last 15 years that the advent of research, genomics, precision medicine, clinical trial modalities, legislative initiatives, awareness campaigns, and of course, as you can see, a little thing called the Ice Bucket Challenge, which put us on the map financially to somewhat of a greater or lesser degree, but put us on the map in terms of awareness. So we also need you to know that the Greater Chicago chapter, which was founded in 23 with 3 employees, it wasn't until 3 years ago that we now have a staff of 13. And so if the Greater Chicago chapter staff that's here could stand up and identify themselves, that would be great. Julie Sharp is our executive director. Anna Harris, development. Chris Johnson, many of you have spoken to. Audrey works with Dr. Kvarnberg in our care. Jessica's walk. Dan's data hygiene. So you can see the growth that's happened within the chapter. We do many, many things as an organization, but the one thing that we want you to know is that we want to do what you want us to do. If we're not doing what you want us to do as an organization and association that's here to serve you, then nothing means anything, really, quite frankly. If we're just going rogue and we think that you guys want more programs or less of science, it doesn't matter because we want to meet your needs. we have nationwide one of the most robust chapters and one of the most collaborative chapters in terms of the organizations that we partner with, the people that are involved with our chapter, the hospitals, the researchers. But if it doesn't mean anything to you, it doesn't mean anything to us. So why the chapter stood up is that we want you to tell us what you want. And take a look at this slide to let you know that we're really working very, very hard to meet your needs. And the expansion on this can kind of highlight that. Before we start the official program, which for those of you who have not been to a symposium before consists of a panel discussion of some of the greatest of the greats, to give us a snapshot of various different areas of practicality as well as science. But before we start the official program, I'd like to take this time to introduce a welcome video from a friend of mine whose name is Kevin Thompson. Now, ALS obviously is highly identified with baseball. Obviously, Lou Gehrig, or what I like to say is if I go into a meeting with anybody, 35 years or below, and I say, Lou Gehrig, they say, is that an app or a breakfast cereal? They have no idea. It's a massive disconnect. But it's associated with baseball. It's now kind of becoming more so associated with football, with Steve Gleason and a lot of the NFL guys being diagnosed. Kevin Thompson is a mixed karate expert who is in the Black Belt Hall of Fame and is alongside Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, and is considered one of the greatest martial artists of all time. Kevin has ALS. And Kevin, if he was here, he would not tell you about his great karate accomplishments and how he chopped up rocks with his hands to make them fine dust. He would tell you that what he's most proud of is a movement that he started called Breakthrough ALS. Because what we hear consistently from every single one of you is, okay, Marilyn, this is great. Where's the breakthrough? Okay, this is fantastic and we love it, but where's the breakthrough? When are we going to have a breakthrough? Breakthroughs have happened significantly, even in the last 3 years. It's impossible for us to explain to you. Dr. Jill Yersak is here from the National Association. She can barely even keep up on the breakthroughs that are in research. But so Kevin started this movement. It's a national movement, and he knew that we were having this symposium, and he said, Marilyn, can I send a message to my family? And so Kevin lives in New Jersey, and this is his message to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Thompson.
And hello, everyone. My name is Chris Rappold, and I'm honored to say I'm a dear friend of this man, Mr. Kevin Thompson. And together, we prepared some words that Kevin wanted me to read to all of you from him. Good evening, everyone, and my ALS brothers and sisters, and a very special hello to my ALS angel, Mary Eileen. I'm honored to be able to share a moment this evening with all of you. My name is Kevin Thompson, and I started showing symptoms in 2010 and was officially diagnosed with ALS in 2012. I would like to stress to the researchers in the audience the importance and urgent nature of the work you're doing. We need, at long last, to alleviate the suffering and find a cure for this terrible disease. For the caregivers, family members, and my friends who are suffering with ALS, let me say to you that I understand. This disease is not easy on anyone, but we must continue to think positive and never give up. Remember the 4 F's: faith, family, friends, and fight. For faith, you have to believe and a higher power. Family are the people who will always be there with you no matter what. Friends are the ones to share your intimate secrets, compassion, and love with. Fight. Fight means don't ever quit, and have passion for whatever you do. Keep moving, don't ever give up. These are the 4 F's that I'd like to have on my report card. As I close out this evening, know that I'm thinking about and praying for all of you on your journey. We are all in this together.
All together. We're all family.
That's right, everyone. We're all family.
So that was Kevin, his welcome message to us, and I think that the reality of it is that those of us in the ALS community share unbelievably intimate parts of our lives with one another, and those of us who work at the Greater Chicago chapter can think of no higher privilege than to share your lives with you. And so by default, we are your family, and we love you, and we're glad you're here today to hear some hope and inspiration. So at this time, I'd like to bring our panelists up. And remember, the note cards are on your table. We have volunteers that will be collecting them. If you want to just hold them up, specifically if it's after one of the speakers. So speakers, if you can take your seats, please. Okay, so our first speaker is Jill Yersak. Jill Yersak, as I mentioned, is from the National Association. Also, Kalanit Balas is here from the National Association in D.C. Jill Yersak works under Dr. Lucy Bruin, who is our chief research scientist, but she is also responsible for communications and collaborating and liaisons. Welcome, Jill Yersak from Washington, D.C.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? So thank you to the Chicago chapter for inviting me today. This is a real honor. I used to volunteer at a multidisciplinary clinic while I was a postdoctoral fellow, so I always cherish these moments when I have time to come and talk to patients and families. So thank you for having me, and I hope someone's interested in research today because I have a little bit of research to talk about. And so let's get started. And so today I'm really going to talk more about the state of ALS research and make you aware of some tools that we have just launched recently with the National. So I always like to start out with the Ice Bucket Challenge. So it happened in 2014. We did not start the Ice Bucket Challenge. Wish we could take credit for that. We did not. But we definitely caught the wave. Out of the $220 million donated, we received $115 million, which is absolutely unprecedented. And of that, that money was important, like Mary Eileen said. The awareness that came with it was most important. So now everyone knows what ALS is and how devastating it is and how important it is to find treatments and a cure. And so that small act of dumping ice in your head really started this viral wave to really move the field really closer to treatments and a cure, and I really believe that. And people like Martha Stewart and Oprah, they actually got their hair wet for ALS. So that was pretty exciting and fun to watch those videos along the way. So from that, from the Ice Bucket Challenge, it's really changed the ALS field, and Marilyn really started to touch on some of that progress that's been made, but we are a team, we are a family, we work together, and the global collaborations that we have been able to make since the Ice Bucket Challenge are huge. And not only do we share open access data and tools with each other, but we talk more, we interact more, and it's really important to have that interaction and collaboration. So there's been advances in technology, which I'm not going to get into today because it's going to be too complicated, but there's, believe me, huge advances in technology. More genes have been discovered since the Ice Bucket Challenge, and really there's been a movement towards basic research, meaning scientists in the lab doing really basic what causes ALS to really translational research, meaning what kind of therapies can we make for ALS? How can we move these drugs or these ideas into the clinic to help people as fast as possible? So at my job, I get questions all the time. So what are the numbers? And it's hard sometimes to put numbers behind it, but I really just want to put this up for you because you may ask this question anyway. So, like I said, we received $115 million from this 8-week Ice Bucket Challenge. Of that, $77 million was dedicated to ALS research. And to date, the association has spent or committed about $71 million. And if you want more information that's more detailed than I'm about to give you, I put up a website right here that has a lot of detail about how we've spent the funds. But we're really proud because we've really been able to increase the amount of research projects we've been able to fund. Right now, we fund over 150 research projects from 11 countries. So we're global. We're not just in the United States, and we're really proud of that. We also have formed 9 huge global collaborations, which I'll give you a little bit more detail in a little bit. We're also able to fund young scientists, the bright young scientists that come into ALS research, and the goal is to really make them successful and stay in ALS research and have those fresh ideas, really move along as fast as possible, and really make their mentors look really good. And so right now we fund 3 clinical fellows and 14 postdocs since the Ice Bucket Challenge. 2 new drugs have entered clinical trials that I want to touch on, which are antisense drugs, which I don't have time to get into detail about, but they target the 2 most commonly inherited genetic causes of ALS. One is ongoing right now, and one is anticipated to start probably second quarter of next year. And there's been several new genetic discoveries that's come along, and numerous collaborations and partnerships. And so I can't emphasize enough that collaboration is so important. We are a team, and it's really the cornerstone of our research program. We partner with industry, we partner with academic labs all over the world, and we try to bring them together. Lucy and Colony play a huge part of trying to making those partnerships happen. We also work with the government, including things like the FDA and other nonprofit organizations. So since the Ice Bucket Challenge, and I can really say that there's really been acceptance of that collaborative feel to really work together in that journey towards treatments and a cure, and to work as efficiently and as fast as possible. And here is just a sampling of some of our collaborations. If you don't see something up there, it doesn't mean they're not a collaborator, but I only have one slide in a few minutes. So as I said earlier, we made 9 global collaborations through the Ice Bucket Challenge, and we've been calling them our strategic initiatives. And they're really large global collaborations that involve multiple academic labs, multiple scientists, multiple postdocs, multiple clinicians that work together, and we partner them with industry to move their ideas and their concepts to the clinic as fast as possible. And so this is just a sampling of those strategic initiatives, and I can answer questions about them if you like later. I also get a lot of questions about clinical trials that are ongoing, and I'm happy to say since the Ice Bucket Challenge, there's more drugs than ever in the clinical trial pipeline. Numbers, it's tough to give an exact number because clinical trials are fluent. Enrollments change, things are stopping and starting. So I think it's safe to say right now there's about 20 clinical trials that are testing a drug, which we call interventional clinical trials. And if you add together the clinical trials that are looking at biomarkers or that are not actually measuring compounds, we're at about 50 or more. And this is some of the ongoing clinical trials that are happening right now. I'm not going to get into detail again because of time, but I wanted to put them up there and also show that these are the clinical trials that the ALS Association is currently supporting. I also want to say that we are in negotiations to also support other ALS trials, and which we're excited about, which I can't talk to you about today, but they are hopefully going to happen. And we've played not just the top clinical trials, but I also want to say that so we fund clinical trials now up to phase 2, or sometimes also including phase 2, and we don't go beyond that because it's cost prohibitive. It's very expensive, and we make sure get those partnerships to then fund those research progresses and projects through clinical trials, which can be extremely costly. But we also work behind the scenes for these clinical trials. A lot of the clinical trials are happening. We've worked preclinically to support them. And one of the best examples of that is the antisense trials. And like I said earlier before that I touched on, targeting both SOD1, which is ongoing right now, and the C9orf72 clinical trial that's anticipated to start in early 2017. So we're proud to fund projects from the state of Illinois. So some of these researchers are in the audience today. Please pick their brains as much as possible. We love answering questions. They come from Northwestern, University of Chicago, and Southern Illinois University. And Dr. Javier Hara, I'm going to embarrass him again, we're really proud of. He was one of our former postdoctoral fellows in our Milton St. Fenowitz postdoctoral fellowship program. He's done so well for himself that he then received a starter grant from us, which is a grant really to springboard him into establishing his own lab, and he's here today. So we do fund scientists in all types of areas of research and in different stages of their careers. So the last thing one of the last things I want to talk about to you today is that we've recently launched our research website from National, and I took a large part in this research, this labor of love. It took about 9 months, and we tried to be extremely thoughtful of how to present research in an understandable way, and to really be transparent of what a research program is about and what all the great things we're trying to do. And I don't have time to go through the whole website, but please check it out. And if you have any suggestions of how we can make it better or things you don't understand, it's not clear, please tell me. I'm happy to help. We want to make this as best as possible. I also want to point out that there's now a new clinical trials tab up top. If you click that it's really easy. It's much more easier now to find clinical trials that are ongoing in your area. Not just the clinical trials that are started and originate in your area, but clinical trial sites. So if you live in Illinois, you can type in Illinois, and a bunch of clinical trials will come up. And we're in partnership with the Northeast ALS Consortium, or NEALS, in this project. And this is insider information, is also redoing their website. And that's going to be launching the next month or so. So that clinical trial searching experience is going to be easier than ever before. So please check that out also. And lastly, we have a research news section. So if you want to learn about any late-breaking news from the association, or just in general that we funded and we did not fund, please, it's a great place to start. And we have, in that we do press releases and news stories, but we also just launched a ALS Association blog. And the blog is really all the research topics that are presented there are in layman's terms, so hopefully easier to understand, and it's not technical. And we love to receive stories from you. So if you have a story, please contact me. We'd love to share it. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to me today, and I'm here for you. I want to help you, and I'm really happy to be, Colleen and I are very happy to be here today. So please feel free to contact me anytime with questions. I'm happy to respond. Thank you so much.
So these slides will be made available to you if I know some of you are taking pictures of the slides. So if you would like to get pictures, the slide deck of this, we will make those available to you. So again, please don't forget, if you have any questions for Jill, to write them down. If you have any questions right now, if you could raise your hand and we'll grab the note cards. Our second speaker is Dr. Kvarnberg. Dr. Kvarnberg is the multidisciplinary clinic director for the VA. We asked Dr. Kvarnberg to speak to you today because of the military component of this. As you all know, depending on who you speak to, military personnel are either 2 to 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with ALS. And the mechanisms and the systems and the protocols within the VA system are very, very different from a traditional clinic setting. Dr. Kvarnberg started at UIC and was under the tutelage of Doctors Rowan and Mariggioli at that clinic there. So as you can tell, we like to keep people. They don't go very far. They go from one Illinois hospital to another. At this time, I would also like to give a shout out on behalf of the Greater Chicago chapter to Winston and Robert. They're from the Paralyzed Veterans Association. They've been great supporters of the chapter and have helped many of our people living with ALS who are military personnel. So without further ado, this is Dr. Kvarnberg.
Okay, thank you, Mary Eileen. Very honored to be here to share some thoughts about ALS and veterans. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of veterans and ALS. I want to talk about a little bit about service connection, what that means to in general, and what it means to ALS patients, and what the VA is doing about this. So it kind of started with veterans throughout the 90s when all these healthy young service members coming back from the first Gulf War, the Gulf War 1990 and 91. And these were healthy young people and developing ALS. And the numbers were small, but it was unusual because just because of the early onset of these the service members. And the original studies came out in 2003 that I'll mention, but even based on the prelim data of those studies in 2001, the Secretary of the VA was saying, we got to start paying attention to this, we got to give these guys special eligibility, and we just have to be aware of this because this is coming down the road. So 2003, these two studies came out. Horner and his colleagues looked at the occurrence of ALS among Gulf War veterans. And what they did is they looked at everyone in the, 2.5 million service members during that Gulf War, 1990 and 91. And they looked at, divided two groups, the group that went to the Middle East and the group that didn't. And the numbers of ALS that developed were small, but it was, because they were all young, healthy people, but it was enough to weed out certain numbers there. And they determined that the ones that were deployed to the Middle East were twice as likely to develop ALS. The other study, Haley, looked at the excess incidence of ALS in young Gulf War veterans, and this study he looked at in comparison to the general population. So again, they're all looking at young, healthy people under age 45, and the ones that were the Gulf War veterans that were deployed to the Middle East were 3 times as likely to develop ALS. So then a study came out in 2005 that said it wasn't just the Gulf War vets. And this one looked at military service 1910 to 1982. They didn't even include the Gulf War veterans. It was 500,000 men. They compared them to regular civilian controls. And they found that any military service gave you an increased risk of 1.58. So not nearly as twice as likely, but close. And then they found that those that served during war times had an increased risk. If you served during 2 war times, the risk went up and so on. So there was something about military service, something about serving during war times, and this study wasn't able to separate out those that went to combat versus those that stayed. They just kind of lumped everyone that served 1941 to 45, and then the Korean War, the Vietnam War, they just lumped them all together. So they couldn't separate out those that exposed to combat. But there's definitely this increased risk during those that served during war times. The risk was similar for World War II, Korean War, Vietnam. I didn't see anything about World War I in there, even though it goes back to 1910. And the risk, it didn't matter what branch of service, it didn't matter how many years you served. It didn't matter where in the world you served. So there's some risk, but it's not clearly characterized. So ALS veterans are service-connected, and I just want to take a few slides to explain what that means. Having a service-connected disability, it goes back to even as early as the founding of our country. The colony of Rhode Island had some legislation that took into account the Continental Congress. They basically said that if you serve, you're injured, you're combat injury, and you're disabled from it, then we're going to compensate you for as long as that disability occurs. And the eligibility for this is based on looking at your military medical records. You know, it's obvious. Sometimes you have a combat injury, you lose your leg, you lose your vision. That's an obvious disability. But there's maybe some diseases that might have developed, and they really had to prove that in their military records that you developed this and now you're disabled. So in 1921, Congress established this presumption of service connection. And this took into account the manifestation of a disease remote to your military service. So something maybe developed decades later that it was felt to be due to your exposures during your service. And this was particularly relevant to the atomic veterans, those that served post-war Japan, maybe exposed to radiation. Agent Orange, all the Vietnam vets were exposed to Agent Orange. There's a whole list of diseases related to Agent Orange. ALS is not one of those, but diabetes, Parkinson's, those are related to Agent Orange. So to determine this presumption of service connection, it's the Institute of Medicine that has to do a whole review of the literature and make this connection based on the current active studies out there. And then Congress gets input of this Institute of Medicine, various service organizations like ALSA and the Paralyzed Veterans Association. So that's what the Institute of Medicine did. In 2006, they reviewed that literature I talked about, and they basically agreed. They said that there is an increased risk of a veteran of developing ALS. And then this whole process started finally in 2008, mainly through the struggles of the Secretary of the VA, Congressman Brown, Senator Graham, and the ALS Association. ALS was determined to have a 30% disability benefit. So this helped expedite faster claims, made them eligible for certain health care benefits. But I think the important thing here happened in 2012 when that 30% was increased to 100% disability benefit. And that meant that 100% service-connected disability benefit meant all aspects of care of that patient is paid for by the VA. So back in 2009, the VA recognized that ALS was a complicated disease and required comprehensive services, and they wanted to standardize it across the country and various ALS centers throughout the country. And it took them 5 years. 5 years later, they published this handbook, and this was a directive, a mandate that said at various centers across the country, we're going to have this very standardized way of caring for ALS. And it's basically the same model of clinic, of the multidisciplinary clinic that we're all familiar with. Now, the VA divides the country into various VISNs. A VISN is a Veteran Integrated Service Network. And you can see there's a map here, there's 23 VISNs across the country. So these are regions, and we're here in VISN 12, Wisconsin, Illinois. And so they said VISN 12 will have 2 centers, Hines VA, which is where I'm from, and the Milwaukee VA has a real nice ALS clinic. They started in 2003. So each one of these VISNs has at least 1 center. Some have 2. Florida has 3. So out there at Hines, I started my clinic in January 2013, and it was basically me and a couple of speech pathologists and a social worker, and we called ourselves an ALS clinic. But it wasn't until 2014 that when that directive came out in 2014, then all these services came all lined up, and everything just fell into place. So this is what the clinic looks like now. It's what we're all familiar with. But I have to say, I can't brag enough about the professional expertise of every one of these services. It's just amazing. I know every institution has very professional services like this, but with the VA, I think it's the combination of the professionalism there, the fact that of the deep resources the VA can provide, and the 100% service connection where all the care is paid for. It's the perfect situation to give these veterans the care they deserve. So this is my last slide. This is brief. I think the question we all have here is why veterans? Why do veterans have this almost twice the risk of developing ALS? And I don't have any good answer. There is no answer. The studies showed that it's some increased risk with serving during war times. It's not related to what branch of military. It's not related to how many years you served or what areas of the world you served. So nobody knows. There's no evidence that says. I have a list here of some possible exposures, some possible risk factors that maybe all veterans might be exposed to, but these are all speculatory. There's no evidence, no studies that show that it's any one of these things, but maybe this is a roadmap for future directions to try to figure something out here. So that's all I have. Thanks.
So that's fascinating stuff, isn't it, about the military connection? Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Kvarnberg, for that comprehensive kind of overview of military service in general and how our government has helped our veterans throughout time. At this point, I want to introduce the great and wonderful Roseann Haven from the Social Security office down in Champaign. This is Springfield, of course. That's our capital, right? Not Champaign. She would be there. So Roseann is one of our most popular speakers. She came to one of our first symposiums 3 years ago, and she was bombarded. So she was so bombarded, she said, I'm accessible, and she was, and we heard back from you how accessible she was, explaining the intricacies and the complexities of Social Security. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Roseann.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Eileen, and thanks to the Greater Chicago ALS Association for asking me to come back. In the entertainment business, when you get asked to come back for a holdover performance, that's really a big compliment and doesn't happen very often. Last week, I was in Las Vegas, live at the MGM Grand, competing in a singing competition. So, yeah, and I'm on YouTube, if anybody wants to see it. I actually was rapping. First time I've ever done that in front of a crowd. I will not do it today, I promise. But I tell these stories because sometimes people think, wow, you look in the program and everybody but me has all of these letters behind their name, and it's such esteemed company. And I'm so honored to be on the podium with people who are doing the kinds of things that all of these folks are doing. And it's amazingly important what they do. But we know that it's also amazingly important to you and your caregivers that you have the resources you need for quality of life and to live your life. So that's why someone as humble as me is up here on the podium with all of these esteemed folks. I want you caregivers to know that I have been in your seat, in your shoes. I lost my husband 6 years ago. He was not an ALS patient, but he had a debilitating progressive disease, and so I understand on a very personal level what you're going through and how difficult your life can be, also how rewarding it can be, and I admire you for being with your loved one and staying by their side. That you are remarkable people, and I want a hand for all of those. Thank you. So this is going to be a real seat-of-the-pants presentation because, of course, this is some very in-depth stuff, high level. I will stick around afterward. Feel free to come up. I even brought business cards, and I will give you one. And it has my contact information. And the ALS Association sends folks to me all the time. Now, they tell me I'm sort of the person of last resort which I don't know if that's good or bad. I've encouraged them to not wait to send people to me for assistance. I am an available resource. I actually answer my own telephone, and I will give you the number. So don't hesitate to contact me. There are two types of benefits that you can get. You can get SSDI, which is based on what you have paid into the system while you've been working. Okay, it's sort of like an insurance policy. You keep paying premiums when they deduct those FICA wages from your paycheck. You're getting insurance that way. And you can also apply for SSI, which is a needs-based program. That's based on an income and resources requirement. You can file for both of these at the same time if you're eligible, technically. And the local Social Security office near you will determine that kind of eligibility, which benefit is best for you to apply for, if you can apply for both. Substantial gainful activity, we get a lot of questions about this. How much can I keep earning and still file for Social Security disability? This amount a lot of times changes in January of each year. It did not change this year because there was no COLA for people getting Social Security benefits, no cost of living increase. So it stayed flat for this year, but you could still earn up to $1,130 a month and collect your Social Security disability benefit at the same time. There are also some questions that people get into about, well, I tried to keep working, and we don't want to punish the people who try to keep working, so there are considerations they give you. If you had to use benefit time part of the time, if maybe you were you work for a private company and they were generous and continued to pay you even though you weren't coming into work. Well, your earnings record will look like you were still reporting to your job, but maybe you weren't. Maybe you were home and they were just giving you some benefit time or accrued leave time to continue paying you. Those kind of things we can take into consideration. It's important. If you had to reduce your job duties, maybe somebody started helping you or you started working part-time, but they continued to pay you a full amount, it will look discrepant. Not always the case. So we need to dig into those issues a little bit, and sometimes that's what I'll help you with. People think they can only file on their own Social Security number, and that is not so. You can file for disabled widow benefits, so a spouse can file on the spouse's number. The local office should be able to determine if you would get a greater benefit from your number or your spouse's number. And you can also file for SSDI based on the SSN of your parent if you are considered a disabled adult child. Okay? Once again, the SSA staff at the local office should be able to advise you what's going to be the most amount you can collect on which number if you are in that situation. Everyone gets denied the first time. Absolutely not. We allow about a third of the claims at the initial filing. Anyone who has got an established diagnosis of ALS will be found disabled. And when I say established diagnosis, we need the medical information that shows you actually how they've arrived at that decision and that diagnosis. ALS is sometimes very difficult to diagnose. We see people struggle for a couple of years sometimes to actually be diagnosed definitively. So because of that, it really becomes critical that we get our hands on the documentation from the hospital, the clinic, the doctor, whomever, that actually establishes that diagnosis, because there are special considerations given to people who have this diagnosis. You are working against time in every way. And fortunately, the Social Security Administration understands that, so they have made some special arrangements for people who are diagnosed with ALS. If you file a claim, you're going to have a quick disability decision if you allege that you have ALS. This is a special unit that works in our office. They sit right next door to me, so I'm very well acquainted with them. I work with them all the time and try to assist them when they have issues too with claims. Your claim will be sent directly to our office. There will be no holding it anywhere for any reason. It will be immediately assigned. And when I say immediately, I mean that day or the next morning. It will get assigned to an examiner. And you should have a decision as soon as we can get the medical evidence to show that you have the established diagnosis, the decision will be made. If the claim comes in with that medical information in it, we'll make a decision the same day we get it. Most of them take, 70 to 90 days to get a decision. Yours will not. This unit is award-winning. They have one of the lowest processing times for claims in the entire United States. So once in a while, the government does do something right. I know, you're amazed, huh? I like to say to people sometimes, I'm going to utter the most frightening words, and we're almost to Halloween. The most frightening words that can be spoken right now is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. But in some situations, it actually is true. And I am one of those, and these folks also take that very seriously, and they do an outstanding job. So in 2001, this is an extremely important slide to you all, because you need your Medicare benefits for caregiving, for medical attention for care, hospital bills and everything else. Medicare is a critical piece for you. Most folks who are receiving SSDI disability have to wait 2 years from the time their claim is allowed until they can collect Medicare. There is an exception for people with ALS. Your Medicare waiting period is waived. You do not have to wait that 24 months for your Medicare benefits to begin. That's why the diagnosis being established that you have ALS is such a critical thing. If you're found disabled before you're diagnosed with ALS and then later on the diagnosis is made, another claim needs to be done, a continuing disability review, to establish the ALS diagnosis so your Medicare can begin. How do you file a claim? The quickest, easiest way is to go to www.ssa.gov because that really is online, saves you having to go into the office, which can take a lot of time. And in most instances, you're going to be able to do what you need to do. They will still contact you after you filed this claim online. They will get in touch with you once it's in the system to ask you some additional questions and, get a little bit more information. Maybe have you sign some paperwork because you do have to authorize us to have access to your medical records. All of those forms are online, though, so you can expedite that part, too, if necessary. So there is another page of the website, steps to apply. You need to have information ready to go when you sit down to do this. You can save the application, and they've made it a little bit easier over the past couple of years. But it is best to have your doctor's information, your hospital information, the address, the phone number, dates of treatment. They can be approximate, but you need to know approximately when you've been seen, why you have been seen, what you were treated for there, if you had tests, and you know what tests you had done, if you're on medication, if you're using assistive devices, all of that kind of thing is going to need to be entered into your claim information. So you want to have that at your fingertips when you sit down to fill out the application, because you don't want to have to save it, run hunt for it, come back. If it times out on you, then you're not going to be able to file online, and you don't want that to happen. That would mean you had to make a trip to the office or do the file over the phone. Teleclaims are, sometimes people sit on hold for quite a while, and I'd rather not have you do that. The medical documentation, a statement from the treating physician that confirms everything, and then the definitive test results, imaging, MRIs, EMGs, CT scans, anything that's going to definitively establish the diagnosis, and get that in your hand if you can. If you can't, we have expedited ways of requesting it. But if you've got copies of it already, it's great if you can just submit that when you send the claim, put in your claim and send it to your local Social Security office. They will be able to forward it straight to us. We do fully electronic filing. There's really not any paper involved, so things are expedited and sped up. If you're a provider, we have very reliable ways for you to submit medical information to us without mailing anything in the paper. We prefer that you fax it to us or that you use our Electronic Records Express website. I'm in charge of signing people up for that part too at my office. So if you need an account to submit medical records to us, see me and I can get you set up for that. And I will be taking questions. I have just a few minutes here that I want to share a few real-life experiences with you that I've had with the ALS Association over the past several years. They send me people who really are sometimes they're at the end of their rope. And I think it was last year, I had a lady get in touch with me by phone, and she was wondering about back pay. Her husband had been diagnosed with ALS. He was receiving his monthly benefits, but his onset of disability had been set back, the year before, and she knew that there should be a lump sum benefit that they were entitled to, and that had never shown up. So she didn't know what the problem was, and so I set about trying to find out, and I got in and looked at some things in the system and saw that the amount was sitting there, but it hadn't been approved to be dispersed. So I contacted that servicing local Social Security office and got in touch actually with the manager. He happened to be a very responsible, reliable guy, and it was a good thing. So he said, I see what's going on. Somebody just didn't know what quite to do, and they didn't, ask. So it had been sitting there a couple months. This was not good. So he said, I'll get this expedited. I'll call the payment center. We'll get it done in an expedited way. I thought that was great. I didn't know what expedited meant. I didn't know if expedited meant next week, tomorrow, whatever. But he was going to expedite it, and I appreciated that. So I called her back, and I said, here's the deal. I spoke to this gentleman. He's going to expedite it. We saw, what the problem was. He's identified that. He's calling the payment center, contacting them. Hopefully you'll hear something soon. If you don't, in a couple of days, call me back, and I'll follow up again with him, and we'll try to track down what's going on. Next morning, about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, she called me, and she said, I got up in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning to check my online banking. She said, I had checked it so many times, I couldn't check it anymore. It had locked me out. So I had to wait till after midnight to look again. She said the money was there. And it's so fortunate because today we're closing on our house. We had to move into a condo because the house wasn't wheelchair accessible, and they had sold the house, but there was a mold issue that had to be remediated, and she needed the money to pay to have that issue remediated. It was thousands of dollars. It took care of that bill and a little bit more. That's the kind of things, that one gives me chills, that's the kind of things that matter the most to me and to you. So if you have those kind of situations, even if they're not that drastic, get a hold of me. That's what I'm there for, okay?
Miracles do happen in certain situations like this, especially when you have people like Roseann who are here to help us, as well as our care services team. One thing before we start with Dr. Mehta, I do want to point out about our care services team. What they do is unique and uncomparable to other disease-based nonprofits in terms of the person-to-person, one-on-one care that they provide by going into the homes, by serving as liaisons to people like Roseann, the Social Security officer, to the Hines VA. This is what our care services team does. I just want to recognize them today again. Jumana, if you could stand. She's our Director of Care Services. Audrey Scafidi. Peggy O'Connor. Where's Peggy? Peggy's in the back. That's our care, and Kelly Branch Dirks, who came all the way up from Peoria. She caretakes for our chapter down in there. Our chapter, we service people up through northern Illinois and down through Champaign-Urbana, up through the lip of Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. We have a very vast service area. So Roseann said that she didn't have a lot of letters after her name, and our next guest has so many of them I can't remember. But they're all in your program. This is Dr. Paul Mehta, who flew in all the way from Atlanta for the Centers of Disease Control, and he's going to talk to you about the National Registry. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mehta.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Mary Eileen, thank you so much for the invitation. Dr. Roos, thank you for the invitation as well. And once again, thanks to the chapter, Panelists Association chapter in Chicago. So my name is Paul Mehta. I'm the PI of the National ALS Registry. Hopefully many of you have heard about the registry and what we do. And I want to give you an overview of all the projects that the registry does. No disclosures, but just a quick history on the registry. So this registry came to about back in 2008 when President signed the act. And this was done by a lot of effort from patients, caregivers, and the ALS Association. They went to Congress, they made the push to simply say we need more resources to look at ALS. And so it was passed, and what that does is it tasks CDC to go ahead and do several things. One of them is the epidemiology of ALS, looking at the incidence and prevalence. What that means is the existing cases of ALS as well as new cases of ALS. It also tasks us to describe who gets ALS, demographics of disease. Is it male? Is it female? Different races and so forth, as well as the risk factors for the disease. What causes this disease? The etiology behind ALS. It didn't make ALS a notifiable disease, and what that means is there are many diseases obviously out there, and a lot of them are reported at the health department, which eventually CDC captures. So a prime example is Zika. If someone has Zika, it's reported to the health department, and CDC will go ahead and get that case confirmation. A lot of the other cancers are that way as well as tuberculosis and some other diseases too. But ALS is not that disease. It does not make it reportable to CDC. So what that means is we had to go ahead and develop a methodology to figure out the number of cases in the United States. So this is a surveillance system. And like any surveillance system, it cannot capture 100% of the cases. It's just not possible to capture all the cases. So what we did was we had a two-pronged effort to go ahead and look at the cases, do a case ascertainment in the United States for ALS. And so we get the bulk of our cases from the national databases. What those are Medicare, Medicaid, and the Veterans Health and the Veterans Benefit Administration. We work with these guys very, very closely, and they send us a list, a file, which we go ahead and apply a certain algorithm to determine the cases. The other portion is the web portal, where some of you hopefully are aware of the web portal, where you can go in, you can go ahead and register, and take risk factor surveys. And these surveys certainly help us out to find out the causes of ALS, etiology behind ALS, and so forth. And so, and I'll go ahead and go over the surveys momentarily. But so we certainly encourage people to go in and go ahead and register and take these risk factor surveys. This is a kind of an important slide here. And so many people think that the registry just counts ALS cases. That's not really the case. We do a lot more than just look at the number of cases in the United States. We fund research, so I'm going to kind of go over this very, very quickly right here. But one of the major additions to the registry coming forth this fall, early winter, will be the National ALS Biorepository. And the biorepository will allow patients to go ahead and opt in for their samples. So we will go to the patient's home and collect their blood, saliva, and so forth, as well as a post-mortem collection if they want to go ahead and opt in as well. There's no charge for the patients for this. We will come to you to go ahead and get your samples. I mentioned the epidemiology part, where we look at the number of cases and so forth, as well as research. Research, we fund approximately, I'd say, $3 to $4 million of research per year with the registry, and these are about 13 grants and research contracts. And there's a list as in terms of who gets funded, but these are the main players in the United States of ALS research. So we want to figure out, what causes ALS first and foremost. What are factors, variables, which may cause someone to more likely to get ALS per se. We want to look at the environment. We want to look at military history. We want to look at other factors as well regarding ALS. We also have something called the research notification mechanism, which when patients come in, they can go ahead and opt in to receive information about clinical trials from researchers. So clinical trials and studies. And so this allows us to go ahead and connect patients with researchers. I mentioned the survey data. We have currently 17 risk factor surveys, and these surveys can be completed online. And these surveys is a wealth of data for us to go ahead and look at, analyze, and determine the etiology behind ALS. And lastly, the partners. The ALS Association works very closely with us to make sure that your voice is heard. So we want to make sure that any recommendations you have to make the registry better, please let us know. I mean, if you send us an email, I guarantee the email will be answered very, very quickly. So it's one of those things. This is your registry. We're just caretakers of it, and we want to make sure we can do the best thing possible to go ahead and advance the science for ALS. We published our second report back in August, and the second report covered calendar years 2012 and 2013. And what that pretty much said was in 2013, we identified almost 16,000 cases of ALS in the United States. Like I mentioned earlier, obviously this is probably not everybody, but this certainly is much more accurate to say back in 2013, about 16,000 cases of ALS were identified. What that means is that's 5 cases of ALS per 100,000. And we also found, which continued to be true from the first report, was that ALS is more common in whites, males, and persons between the ages of 60 and 69. And we also found, similarly, regarding that ALS affects veterans more so than any other group. So that's also something that we're also seeing as well. Our colleague here also mentioned the same thing too. Males also have a higher prevalence of ALS. So we're not sure why males get ALS more so than females. That's a question that's got to be answered. These are our current risk factor surveys on the registry, and when somebody comes in, opts in to go ahead and join the registry, they can take these surveys. So far, we have over 60,000 completed of these risk factor surveys, and they range from demographics, occupational history, physical activity. There's also a survey here which allows you to enter in what you think may have caused your disease. It's an open-ended survey. And so these things right here are currently being analyzed. We had a meeting with the group just recently, actually just a couple days ago. It's called the Prize for Life group, which I believe my colleague mentioned as well. And they have the IBM Watson supercomputer, which we want to talk to these guys to go ahead and take this data and look at it and maybe see something that we don't see. I mean, this is a supercomputer, obviously, and so it could maybe dive in there and figure out perhaps some unknown etiology or so forth regarding ALS. The research notification system, so like I mentioned, when a patient comes in and registers on the registry, they can go ahead and opt in to receive information about clinical trials or studies they can participate in. We kind of play the middleman. A researcher comes in, they go ahead and say, I want to recruit from the registry. We don't ever give them your information, names, or emails. That's never done. We just simply send an email out to patients simply saying, with a PDF or a link saying, please contact this researcher if you're interested in a clinical trial or a study. The National ALS Biorepository, now this is what I mentioned briefly. So this was a pilot project, initially a 4-year study to kind of figure out the feasibility of creating a pilot project. And many experts came in from around the country to give us advice regarding a biorepository. And you ask, well, why do a biorepository? What's the need for a biorepository? Because there are more unknowns and knowns about ALS, it's important to go ahead and advance the science. So a biorepository will go ahead and have us look at biomarkers, blood, saliva, so forth. We can do genome testing, look at the genetics of ALS. And like I mentioned, we will come to you, and we will go ahead and take your samples, and we'll go ahead and send them off, and they'll be processed. Please note, it's not launched right now. We're still waiting for all the government approvals, as one can imagine. And once it does get launched, your chapters will go ahead and let you know, and there'll be certainly a push by everyone to simply say, hey, the biorepository is launched, and those who are interested in joining, you can please go ahead and do so. This is just briefly the types of samples that we actually will be collecting for the in-home: blood, hair, nails, saliva. Post-mortem would be brain, bone, and so forth. And another important aspect of the biorepository was all those surveys I showed you, so 17 surveys, they'll be connected together with the biorepository samples. So we'll have the epi data from the surveys as well as the biospecimens themselves. So feasibly, we could figure out if that particular sample, that person, if they were in the military, what their occupation was, what their sex was, and so forth. And that's certainly very, very valuable data. And there's no other biorepository out there which actually does that matching and has that robust data which can be matched and paired with samples. This will be nationally representative. What that means is this will be beyond typically the multidisciplinary centers, so it'll be coast to coast. We do sample collections in the pilot project in many, many mountain states: Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. We come to you, like I mentioned. And this by itself will go ahead. So currently there's other biorepositories out there, but some of them what they are, they're leftover samples. These are pristine samples. So meaning to say these samples have not been touched, and once they get sent out to researchers, they can go ahead and do their studies regarding biomarkers and so forth. I mentioned funding. So as a scientist, research funding is so important to make sure that we advance the science and figure out what causes this disease. And so we're committed to funding research as much as possible. We funded 5 grants, 3 this year and 2 the year before, and next year we'll be funding additional ones as well, pending funds, that is. But the premise is, we want to go ahead and advance the funding when it comes to ALS research. ALS Association does a great job as in terms of getting their monies out for research too. But for us, it's a little bit not more cumbersome, but it has to be peer reviewed. It has to be, you submit an application. And so a lot of the scientists around the country will go ahead and apply. And these are currently the 13 currently funded research institutions right now. And many of them, are the makers and shakers of ALS. Mentioned Dr. Mark Weiskopf from your paper there earlier about the vets. He's the first one that we funded up there as well. And so there's a lot of individuals here that do a lot of different research, varied research. It's not just one single type of research. This research is very, very diverse. And we want to go ahead and expand this research to go ahead and make this list longer so we can kind of go ahead and figure out, hey, like I mentioned, what causes this disease? That's pretty much it. So like I mentioned, we're all in this fight together. The registry, this is your registry. If you guys have comments, questions, issues, please let us know. I mean, we're here for you. And certainly, it's one of those things. The registry is evolving. It's maturing. And back in 2010, when we launched, it was just kind of getting off the ground. And as it matures and adds more components to it, we feel this will be a registry which certainly will advance ALS research in the country, if not the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. This last slide that he has up there is just a snapshot more so of what's happened in the landscape of ALS even in the last 3 years. The independent foundations, the Project Mind, Prize for Life, several other independent organizations nationwide and internationally that are working on behalf of ALS. So you guys all hanging in there? Do we need to power through? We saved Dr. Cox, the best for last, the longest running researcher in his medical field, who was nominated by Time magazine in 1997 as one of the heroes of medicine. Dr. Cox came here from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to share his findings with you, as well as his heart in choosing to study the field of ALS prior to working the field of HIV, because as he said to me last night, Mary Eileen, I just really want to help these people a lot. So with no further ado, here's Dr. Cox from Jackson Hole.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Your town's a little bit bigger than my town. But I brought with me a film clip. There's a team doing a documentary, and one of our local residents agreed to narrate this. And so let's see if you can figure out whose voice this is. Let me see if we can get this going here. Boy, that is not going to work, is it?
Paul Cox is a different kind of scientist, driven by a passion for people, nature, and cultures worldwide.
I think we're going to stop right there. Any guesses who that was? He was in a film involving the hospitals right here in Cook County. So let me just quickly tell you what we're doing here. Too bad we couldn't see that. This is Harrison Ford. Very nice man. Very pleased to help. And anyway, so we've been studying a focus of an ALS-like disease in Guam. It's ALS plus, so it has all the features of ALS, plus features sometimes of Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, called Guam ALS PDC. This has been traced to people eating the seeds of the cycad trees. They make flour from them. Inside these aerial roots of the trees, we found that the cyanobacteria that are harbored there in the roots, you can see that little green color there, they produce a toxin called BMAA. And we've traced now this toxin in the Chamorro village food supply. So we've been working in some little villages in the remote island of Guam. Let's see here. Okay. The people take the kernels of the seed, they make tortillas out of them or flour. They then eat these. We also found that these big bats feed on the seeds, and the people love to eat these bats. And through special arrangement with the cafeteria here at the Rush Hospital, no, I'm just teasing you. So the hypothesis we came up with was that these bacteria produce this unusual toxin, gets into the tree, gets in the people, and gives them an ALS plus-like disease. At its height, about 25% of the villagers were dying of ALS. We've now detected this in our colleagues in brain tissues of people in the mainland of ALS patients. Where do you get it? Because people here don't eat bats or cycads. We've traced this to cyanobacterial blooms. Here's a big one in Lake Michigan. Here's one in the archipelago between Sweden and Finland. And so we're working with a team at Dartmouth University, Elijah Stommel and his team, Eric Poriri at Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Walter Bradley at Miami, trying to figure out how BMAA, this toxin, gets from these blooms into people. It's very interesting. The Dartmouth team has just found that people who water ski have about a 2 times fold increased risk of ALS. We don't know if people are getting it from contaminated water or eating fish or inhalation. We're trying to figure that out. But anyway, back to the village. We wanted to recreate this disease in an animal model. So we used vervets in St. Kitts. These are non-human primates. We gave each of them, after their regular meal, a banana with a test substance inside. Some of them just had rice flour in that banana. Others had this toxin, BMAA. Some got L-serine. Some got a combination of the two. We ran this for 140 days. When we got the tissues from the animals, we saw that they developed neurofibrillary tangles. These are brain tangles, similar to what you see in Alzheimer's patients, and amyloid plaques. And we've now seen ALS-type pathology in these animals as well. We wanted to replicate this, so we did that and doubled the size of the animal population and got the same results, that chronic exposure, at least through the diet of these animals, triggered neuropathological illness. So we've determined that chronic dietary exposure produces this neuropathology that we see in the villagers in Guam, that the more that you're dosed with this, the greater the pathology. But what's really exciting to us is we found that when we added a common amino acid called L-serine to the animal's diet, that it reduced and slowed the formation of this neuropathology. We asked the FDA for permission to conduct a clinical trial on L-serine. They granted this very rapidly. I mean, I just want to kidnap our Social Security Administrator here. You would be welcome in Wyoming, I'm going to tell you. And the FDA has been fabulous with us as well on this. We got our approval for that trial within 4 days, which may be a record for the FDA. We just published that trial in a journal published by the ALSA just a couple of weeks ago. Let me tell you what we found. The trial, there's 3 phases of clinical trials. Phase 1 is to make sure that the drug under study doesn't hurt people or doesn't kill them. The second, phase 2, is to make sure it works. And the third phase is to look for side effects and broader results. So we had 20 patients, double-blinded, meaning neither the patients nor the physicians knew who was getting what dose. It was a randomized dose. They got between 5 and 30 grams of L-serine a day orally. And then we used a scale that neurologists use to measure functionality in patients called the ALS-FRS. This patient populations were studied at Phoenix Neurological Associates in Arizona and in the Norris ALS MND Clinic in San Francisco. Here's what we found. We found that the patients tolerated the doses very well. I think we had 2 patients that had some sort of GI problem. And it's not clear to me if that was attributable to the drug or not, but everybody was just fine. But what we did find, and this was quite surprising, is that we found that the people getting the highest dose had a slowing of about 85% of disease progression. Now, the problem with that, and I was really wondering if I should tell you this or not, I'm sort of humbled to be in your presence, and I work for you ultimately. But we don't want to beat the drum on that because there's been a lot of phase 1 studies published where there's some really early indication of efficacy, and this trial was not designed to do that. It was just trial to test safety. What we really have to do is to replicate this in a bigger trial to make sure it's really true before we beat the drum. And we don't want to send anybody off on a wild goose chase. So we've now designed a phase 2 clinical trial for 66 patients to see if that same little effect we saw in this very small trial holds up. And I've really got some wonderful neurologists running this, Dr. Robert Miller from San Francisco, Dr. Wally Bradley from the University of Miami, Dr. Todd Levine from Phoenix. And we will have this trial at 10 different neurological centers throughout the country. We're hoping one of those could be right here in Chicago. There will be 66 patients. Every patient will be given 30 grams per day orally of L-serine. We'll be watching very carefully to make sure there's no adverse effects. And then we're going to measure very carefully to see if this compound will actually slow functional decline. The trial is going to cost us $1.5 million. We've raised $1 million of that already. You'll notice if you come to Wyoming, most of the cars are missing their hubcaps, and I'll tell you why later. We're looking for another $500,000 to complete this trial. As soon as we get the money, we'll launch the trial. I'm very hopeful that we can launch in January. As we speak, the papers have been submitted to the FDA for submission. So let me just sort of conclude really quickly here, because I know you've been very patient. My colleagues and I wake up every morning thinking about ALS. We walk into our laboratory thinking about ALS. I'm an ethnobotanist. I have discovered other drugs for other illnesses. I know that this is not my first rodeo, as we say in Wyoming. I really want you to feel some hope here. I was so thrilled to be with my colleagues here at the Scientific Symposium. The work that's happening here in Chicago that's funded by these people is first rate. It blew my mind this morning to see what these guys are doing. And all of us have one focus, and that focus is to make a change in the topography of this illness. And I plan to do it while you're still alive. We're going to change this thing right now. We're not going to wait for decades. We're going to change it now. And the fastest way I know to change it is to do these clinical trials, be very careful to make sure the stuff all these people are coming up with is safe for you, it won't hurt you, and then pray to the dear Lord that it will work and make your day a little bit better. If that happens, come to Jackson Hole. I'll take you skiing. I'll give you, if I have a sandwich, I'll give you half of it. You're welcome in my lab, and I think I'll stop there. Here's my scientist that helped me. Thank you so much for welcoming me to Chicago.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Julie Sharp. Mary Eileen had introduced me later, and I get the privilege of leading this amazing team every day on your behalf. We do truly consider this to be a privilege to be able to be here for you, each and every one. You've heard a lot today. I hope there's some more questions out there. At this time, I'll ask the volunteers to go around and pick up the questions that we may have while we're waiting for a couple of those to come forth. Again, I just want to share with you how much we appreciate you taking the time and making the time to be here today. We found 6 years ago that there was a need in our community for education about research, about the practical mechanics of the disease, an awareness for individuals to have an understanding of what services are available to you, what equipment may be available to you, and it's not your responsibility to know these things and to find out these things. That's why we're here. We have an amazing care services team that are integrated into our 6 clinics now that Mary Eileen had mentioned, 2 of which are Centers for Treatment of Excellence, the very first ones in the state of Illinois. The University of Chicago was first to go, shortly followed by University of Illinois, Rockford, and North Shore, and a few of the others are on track to be recognized centers of care. There's a standard model for the ALS multidisciplinary clinics across the country, and we are very proud to be part of the association and to have these clinics available for our patients where we're looking at holistic care. We know how difficult it is to make it to clinic or to make it to the appointments, and it's so, I keep getting more and more questions. So a little distracting, I'm sorry. Could have somebody vet them for me. I need y'all to understand that when you come out and you help us with our Walk to Defeat ALS, and you come out to the Iron Horse Ball, or you participate in the Golf Classic, or you do your part, you help us bring the services to the families that need it so much. It helps us fund the research that these guys are working on to find the cause and the cure and the therapies that are so desperately needed. We understand the sense of urgency that our families have and that they want. We also understand that there's a lot of compassion, and we want to take the mechanics of the disease off so that you can live with ALS and you can have the confidence in knowing that the partners that we have are there. They offer the same quality customer service that we expect. And lastly, I just want to say that, Roseann was kind of joking about government, but the ALS Association has done an amazing job of collaborating. We have 2 of the finest gentlemen over here from the PVA that MI had mentioned. We are the short from here to there. No one needs to struggle. Pick up the phone and call us. We answer our phone. I don't want anybody out there struggling. And I have to give a hand out to the VA. They've done an amazing job for our veterans, and you don't always hear that. So one of the other things that we're committed to is, because we have such an incredible clinic team that support our multidisciplinary clinics as well as our care service team, is that we fund annually education stipends to ensure that the clinicians are getting the best practices. And so we have amazing people going from all of our clinics to the ALS Association's clinical conference, which we're hosting in a couple of weeks out in San Diego, and it's very exciting because they get to collaborate with the other 43 chapters and our care services team at the National Association to learn the greatest and the best to bring it back home to you guys. So thank you. We appreciate all your support. And so I have a couple of questions now for the panel. Does the caregiver get paid by Social Security? Do they have to be registered?
I don't know who it was that asked that question, but if you'll see me afterward, I'll give you a business card because it's kind of an involved explanation. So we'll need to do a little more talking.
Thank you, Roseann. This is a registry question. Do you offer obtaining post-mortem samples in Chicago? How do you obtain post-mortem samples?
So the samples would come from the patients who opt in to go ahead and participate in the post-mortem portion of the study itself. So once the biorepository launches, we'll go ahead and have individuals, once they come in and join the registry, they'll go ahead and consent to receive information about the biorepository, and they can go ahead and have either an in-home collection with their blood saliva, or they can go ahead and opt in to get additional information for the post-mortem collection. So chances are Chicago most likely will be an area that will be targeted. Keep in mind, a post-mortem collection is very, very expensive. So we're looking at probably 10 post-mortem collections per year, at least in the first year, to kind of gauge demand. I mean, when you have a post-mortem collection, the samples have got to be sent, and they're processed, and they're sent to Boston VA, which is one of the leading institutions regarding TBI research. and they actually go ahead and do all the sample processing at that point. I don't want to be too gross, but the premise is we want to go ahead and certainly make it representative where we can get samples from across the country. In the pilot project, we have samples pretty much everywhere for both the in-home. The in-home collection has got one sample from at least one state, and the postmortem collection has got samples scattered about here and there.
Thank you. Since the toxin you identified has been found in bodies in water, etc., are you targeting these areas in your studies? I think that's for Dr. Cox.
The answer is yes. I think we've made a pretty good case that the toxin is what's triggering the disease among the people of Guam. What we don't have conclusive evidence for is a relationship between people in the mainland and other diseases. There's a lot of studies going on looking at that. All the researchers believe that ALS is, first of all, different diseases that sort of resemble a single syndrome, and secondly, that they're the result of a gene-environment interaction. So the answer is, please don't eat bats, don't drink green, smelly water out of the lake, and if you're golfing or your spouse is a golfer, please do not lick the green golf balls until we find out it's safe. So I'm going to take a bye on that one. I think we've made a case for Guam. The mainland case remains to be made. Thank you.
If I could just quickly add, the list of institutions we're currently funding, those 13, one of them actually is Dr. Elijah Stommel, who's actually doing that study in Ohio in the Great Lakes Lake area as well. So.
And then this is a follow-up question. Dr. Cox, who is the clinical trial open to, and how will you select people?
The clinical trial will be open to people that are in these 10 different regions, and we're looking for people who have early onset ALS with a functional capacity of over 60%. On the other hand, I'm talking to Apple, hopefully next week, about the possibility of having a shadow trial. Let me see if that might work and let you know. But at this point, I definitely do not encourage patients to take this compound until we see if it actually works.
Thank you very much. Roseann, this is another question for you. In terms of SSI, which is the best as far as compensation, a disability claim or a regular claim, and which is the most beneficial?
I'm not sure I understand the question. SSI is the needs-based program. SSDI is based on what you've paid in when you were working. So if you haven't ever worked, SSI is the only thing you would probably be eligible to file for because you haven't paid into the system. But you can file for both concurrently if you're technically going to meet the requirements. So if you have worked, but now your resources are low enough that you can file for SSI, you can actually file for both at the same time. And that's something your local office determines. You give them information about your income and resources, and they have your earnings record. You all realize that security is part of the name, but they have got a record of every penny you've ever made from the time you were 14 years old. If it got reported as FICA wages, that's out there in their system. So they'll know how much money you've made and if you're meeting insured status or not, and if you're eligible to apply for that. Hope that. If that didn't answer the question, please come see me afterward, okay?
And Dr. Roos, who is out here we have a question for you. Are there any biomarkers showing promise?
So biomarkers are very important, and I frequently tell patients who might come to the clinic and say, do I have ALS? I compare the situation to the diabetes status, and somebody comes in and says, do I have diabetes? We could do a fasting blood sugar or a glucose tolerance test. We have a blood test to make the diagnosis. And unfortunately, we don't have that for ALS and a number of neurodegenerative diseases. And we want it for diagnosis. And as Dr. Merigioli talked about this morning in the scientific symposium, it would be very valuable with respect to clinical trials as well. We could kind of follow clinical trials and the efficacy using a biomarker. We don't have it, and there's a lot of work out there in order to test candidates as biomarkers. In fact, Dr. Roseann, one of my colleagues at the University of Chicago, is looking with a neurophysiological test to see whether that might fit the boot as far as a biomarker. We don't have that, and there's a lot of investigations and a lot of funding looking for biomarkers. Thanks.
And can I'll add to that too.
Oh, please.
So the association's really cognizant of how important that biomarker studies are, and we have a lot of studies that are happening that we are funding that are very promising, and I think soon we will have a biomarker. I can't give you a timeline. I hate to do that because science takes time, but I think it's a very exciting time, and I think we will have something relatively soon. And biomarkers, just to clarify, are not just it can be imaging also. So we have some really cool imaging studies happening that you would do an MRI or PET scan, and we also have things that look in your blood and the cerebral spinal fluid. So we're pretty much looking at the gamut of things, and hopefully something comes up positive relatively quickly.
Thank you. If someone is getting VA benefits, can they also get Social Security benefits, or do they affect each other?
You most certainly can. In fact, we're talking about 100% VA disability, and we have actually just started in the last couple of years, SSA recognized that people who are already found 100% service-connected disabled by the VA get their claim expedited when they apply for disability with Social Security, no matter what their diagnosis is. But especially ALS patients, if you have a diagnosis of ALS, whether you have a service-connected 100% or not will expedite it. But those two go hand in hand. Yes, you can collect both.
Thank you, Roseann. And I just want to go on quickly and say, the ALS Association is the leader in our public policy realm and advocating. And every year we take a delegation of individuals living with ALS, caregivers, family members with us to the Hill. It's one day a year, part of a conference. We advocate year-round. Colin Nate and our public policy team are actually housed in D.C., and they're working on, while we may have 4 or 5 different objectives every year we go to the Hill with, they're working on over 150 asks and different programs that are taking place that affect individuals living with ALS. And this benefit that Roseann was talking about, the 24-month waiver, we were the leaders in this. And we really made it happen, as well as with the ALS, the service connected. We took the lead on that. And I really want y'all to understand that as you are partnering with us and allowing us to be the ones walking alongside of you, you've got the leaders out there, the leaders in research, you've got the leaders in public policy and advocacy, and by far you've got the leaders in the care that are being provided for you and your loved one. What is new in stem cell research?
So we actually just put out a press release, I think, earlier this week. Dr. Clive Svensson from Cedars-Sinai just got approval to start a stem cell trial. His stem cells are special. I like to call them very special because they actually emit a nutrient that helps motor neurons. And those are one of the types of cells that die in ALS. So this study is hopefully going to start early next year, even by the end of the year. But this is a really cool study that we've been funding since its beginnings, and I think shows a lot of promise. And we're really looking forward to seeing this. Just to be clear, this is a safety study because this is the first phase 1. With about 18 patients that are recruiting out of Cedars-Sinai specifically. Dr. Ballo, I think that's how you say his name, is leading the study along with Clive as a consultant. So I'm happy to take any to answer any more questions about that afterwards.
Thank you, Jill. Dr. Kvarnberg, is there any connection between ALS and PSTD? Is there any research on Afghanistan? And do you know any women affected? And do you need volunteers in any area? So, I'm not sure if that's for you or us.
Let me see if I remember all the parts of that question. I don't know of any connection between ALS and PTSD. The other parts were...
Any research on Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, I don't know of any. I have a few patients from Afghanistan, but no research that I know of. And then women with ALS, they're veterans, very low in number, but just based on the vet population. I actually have only one woman in my patient population.
And I do know over the course of the years we have served several individuals that were women who are veterans who have had ALS. But again, I think that's where it speaks volumes to go and enroll in the registry, where maybe some of these correlations can start being shown and where studies can be designed to look at some of these specific and specific questions. And the volunteers, I'm sure whether it's Hines VA or us, we are always open. And couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. And there are many of them here today that dedicate their time. We have an ambassador program where the individuals go out and are really wed to us. We have about 30 individuals right now. And then we have Lou's crew. So if you're interested in volunteering, please go to our website and sign up. And I guarantee you will be reached out to. How is the ALS connection being communicated to veterans?
I think it starts in the clinics that they present to, whether it's, I get referrals from ALS Association and Les Turner, and it's just awareness of the staff in those clinics. They ask the patient, are you a vet? And that's how it all happens. Then they get to refer to the PVA guys, and then we just hear about it, and then we immediately schedule them.
Absolutely. And I know that's something that our care services team is very mindful of, is asking one of the first questions, are you a veteran? Just because it opens up such an amazing window of benefits to the individuals living with ALS. Do we know anything about firefighters or first responders in ALS?
So there's been some interest from New York City regarding that particular question about firefighters and first responders with the 9/11 tragedy. So, but that's being coordinated through the New York City Department of Health and the State University of New York. So they saw some slight increase of ALS cases on first responders after 9/11. So, but to put two together is still remains to be seen.
Thank you very much. Is there a link between FTD and ALS? Frontotemporal dementia and ALS. Would you like to speak to that, sir?
Is there a link between FTD?
Is there a link between?
Yes, and that's for sure. And for example, so far we have at least 2 genes, that's a genetic form, and one is called ubiquinin-1. In the mutation in the patients with the gene mutation ubiquinin-2, and about 30% of the patients will have ALS and dementia. And a few patients only have dementia, but several years later they will develop ALS. And the second one is the most prevalent, the genetic mutation we call C9 operating frame 72. And that one accounts for over 30% of the familial ALS and about 5% in the sporadic ALS. So in that mutation, most of the patients, ALS patients, have dementia. So so far, the dementia, the frontotemporal dementia and ALS share the same cause in a fraction of the patients.
Thank you very much. at this point, I think if there's any other questions that we didn't get around to. Does anybody have any last-minute questions? Anything? Yes, ma'am? Yes, you will be getting a copy of the slides. We will probably most likely put them on Facebook or put them and also within our website. I want to go back to what Jill said earlier about our website with the research paper. You can go to our website, our chapter website, and click through, and it is such a fantastic tool that we have been given. It shows the United States as well as globally where we are all funding projects, what's going on. You click on the map, it takes you right to Illinois. You can see everything that's happening right now, or you can go to Finland and see what's happening. Wherever we're funding research, it's such an amazing tool that has been developed for our families because they do want to know about what research is taking place. I think it's very exciting that one of the things they had is, we are a worldwide lab. We invest in research around the world, not just one lab in one location. But to go back to what Dr. Roos said and Dr. Cox, there is so much happening in our backyard. It is so exciting for all of you folks to know how many individuals are working on ALS just here in the Chicagoland area. And they are so committed to helping in so many different ways. In closing, I want to give a shout out. We have corporate sponsors in addition to the in addition to the care service provider vendors. Exelon has been one of our large partners, but I also want to give a shout out to Tom Nolan, who's here with us today. He's from Accenture, and he's been in the long haul for the last 6 years. He's also part of the Project MIME. Accenture, one of the gentlemen from there was really involved. So, today we've talked about collaboration, we've talked about conversation, and there's so many awesome things that are happening across the ALS community, all to benefit you. To go back to what Mary Eileen said, none of this means anything if it's not for you, and that's why we're here. We're very grateful. Thank you. And a last-minute announcement. The vendors are here, so please go out and visit with them if now you have more questions. Our esteemed panelists are here, and they're willing to take conversation and questions. So please, thank you. Oh, and your valet parking. Just make sure that you get it stamped here as you exit. Anything else? Join us for the Iron Horse Ball in February and enroll in the registry.